Okay, so we've got a beautiful topic of stag, absolutely stunning, um, and this lovely wintry feel kind of, you know, theme. So there's all sorts of pictures with some kind of wintry pictures, wintry effects in there. So one of the biggest things with pastel is definitely thinking about layering up. So it's not dissimilar to how we would layer up in acrylics, that we're coming from those very background layers forwards. And the beauty of them is we can, because the papers have something called a tooth in them, we tend to be able to layer up those things on top of each other. I am not going to, I'm going to put the steer in separately, however, and just kind of bring some of this background a little bit into the antlers. Because actually we don't, when we've got a big block like this, obviously the body of the stag here, we don't really need to kind of do all of that underneath it. But I will bring the background in first before we kind of attempt the front of the deer, the stag. But the one of the things, as well as learning to layer up, is that whichever bit we're working on, we fix those darker colours into place first. And I know this is not the darkest, but it's one of the darker on the background. So yes, we're going to be finding our best fit for colours, because we just obviously in a box of pastel you don't always have the exact one, but that makes us really quite experimental and brave with our colour, which is fabulous. You can kind of work quite loosely and get a real kind of loose feel of the stag, or you can work more tightly and kind of accurately. It's entirely up to you. The beauty of pastels is that contact with the page. So it's a really tactile way of connecting with artwork, which is absolutely fantastic when you get into it. But don't be put off by the pastels. It takes time. I always say half a dozen times really with pastel before you feel really kind of in the flow with it. But we can start to get in that way just with experimenting and enjoying it. Even in the first session, it's just more really every single box of pastels, brand of pastels, and every brand of paper is works and behaves entirely differently. So what I would say is it's just really you experimenting and getting used to your paper with your pastels. And the reason I say that is that some pastels are really soft and chalky and kind of really smudge really easily, and other pastels are a bit harder. So we have to kind of pop a little bit more on, or put a bit more pressure. So it's getting used to how much to put on as well. I'll take you through kind of the pitfalls. Um, the number one being like colours getting all muddy and how we can avoid that, but we'll talk that through as we go. But yeah, just start to kind of really enjoy, I would say. If you've got white paper, that's absolutely fine. If you've got a coloured paper, you can let that colour come through it, come through the background. Um, so and let that come through in between. That's absolutely fine as well. And yeah, I just really, really enjoy this session. So one of the things that we'd be thinking about as well is how much pastel to put on. Um, because when I was mentioning about the paper and the tooth of the paper, some papers are have much more tooth and are much more grainy, and so sometimes people like that effect and to show it. I'll just show you the front cover of my art paper just to show you what I mean. And that's quite helpful to illustrate. So on here, this is one by Canson that I use called Me Taints. But you can see the paper is incredibly grainy. And so you can use that to get texture and just kind of not put it on quite as thickly, or you can totally cover and put more pastel on. So a lot of this with the experimentation will be working out what it is that you like. Because some people having that texture come through drives them absolutely mad. They just think and just don't like the effect. And in which case, as you're doing it, if you're starting to find that, then just put more on. It's just, you can put much more on and we'll cover it over. So it's trial and error and just getting to grips with your paper. If this is the first time you've done it, tonight is really experimental about, how much you want to put on, etc. when you do this session for the first time. But it's as I said, it's a gorgeous topic. So what I'm looking for in here are my darkest colours first of all. And as I said, it just depends on whether you find a colour or a match that you like. So you could have a look at whatever colour you've got in your background, and you might have one that's a little bit more some of the other ones, there's a few more colours and things, isn't there? So have a little look. If what we need to do is get the darkest ones set in place, and if you've got we can blend some over the top, but we've got to be a little bit careful if it's two opposite colours, like say blue and yellow, because that'll give us a green if we're mixing that in, definitely. So we just got to be thinking about how we apply it. If they're all the same tone, like they're all orangey yellow, then that's okay. You can kind of blend them together a bit more without worrying that it's going to go muddy. If it's like a brown and a white and you want to keep that white more clear, then again, we'll just apply that more carefully once we get to those lighter stages. So first off, this one, like this morning, like all people saw all sorts of things. We had lilacs and pinks and greys and like a taupey colour. So what I'm doing on my tester paper is just having a little test of which I think is I like. And you'll see there's quite a lot of tooth in this paper as well. So I'm just layering this up like this to see how much coverage I'm going to get. Am I going to leave it a little bit to come through or not? So I'm not going for the grey. I'm going to I think I will look at this taupey colour here. Because as I said, sometimes we just don't have a specific colour. So I'm just testing out which dark one I might want to use. So you can see here, I'm putting a bit more pressure on and it's covering more. But it's still quite a toothy paper as this one. So just go through the colours. I mean, the biggest thing is if you're going from a dark to a light, you need to really wipe your fingers in between. I know that's a really obvious thing, but that's why a lot of the reason people get things muddy. So you kind of just, if you've got something there that you can wipe off, and then make sure you dry your fingers as well. That's another thing to think about. And then you know that you're not going to get that muddiness by transferring the colour. So I'm just going to keep looking at what I've got in my kit. I used this one this morning and I really liked that one actually. So I may come back to it, but just keep having a little look at what you've got in there. There's another taupey one here. I think because my light, I'm going to go for that one actually this time. I think because my light is brighter in here, I'm using a daylight lamp on here. So it is it's a slightly different effect. So I might use that one. And I tend to keep all my pastels fairly like nearby so that when I come back to them, I know, which ones I'm using. Now, that one's a bit darker. Let's try that one. I quite like that one as well. Oh, not sure which one. I might use that now. I'm going to use that one. So yes, we just really trial and error with those colours. Just, and if you've only got one brown or one, you tend to get something lighter, like a peachy or a creamy one as well as a white. Then we can use that one over we can use another of the creamy ones over the top. So we can kind of, make that a little bit less bright. I'll just pop those there. So I'm just testing those because I want to kind of get some background colours ready for when we start. So I'm just now testing this creamy colour. I might use that to go over the top of one of these other colours if it's a bit too bright. Just see what you've got in your kit. I think that one's a cream one. Yeah, that one's a bit more yellow. So again, we're just looking at the tones and things like that. But I have to say, if there's a colour that you just really connect with and you think, oh my goodness, I absolutely love that. It might even be like a light blue or something. You think, oh, I love it. Then use that, stick with that one because that's the joy part of it, really. So when we're transferring this over, I'm going to do the folding, actually. Again, if you're not sure exactly proportionally where everything goes, then we can use this little grid system to help. It just gives us a bit of an idea. I think my line's gone a bit below where it should do, but it's okay. There we go. Right. So when we kind of mapping something out, one of the really important things with pastel is when you're doing it, just use something that's slightly, just one or two tones slightly lighter or darker than the paper that you're using. And then because what you can do with the pastel then is if you don't like it, you can just blend it off. So when you're doing it, when you're kind of like mapping out where everything goes, just use one or two tones lighter or darker. I'm going to make it quite a bit darker just so that you can see what I'm doing. Otherwise, you won't see it on my pastel paper. So I'm just going to come in with this tone here. So again, I'm just kind of looking whereabouts the middle section is on here. I tend to just do this just for an idea, and then that gives me like a little thing of where the middle is. And then I'm just going to kind of map out where the head and body come through. So I tend to not just draw things in isolation either, like just the back end, because the great thing about practicing kind of drawing, even if it's with a grid, is that if we use the flow of something like the animal or a person or whatever it is, or a building, it makes sense. And it's like a muscle memory every time you do it, it sticks. So you're best actually using the whole form rather than little chunks in isolation. I know we've done it like if there's lots of little houses or little things, it's easy. But if you've got one big animal or whatever, it's quite nice. So I'm just looking at where, whereabouts the head comes within this section. So that's halfway, isn't it? So it's just about here, I think. So I'm just popping in like a little where the antlers kind of are going to go there, and then the head, getting the side of the head in, and I'm just following really what I can see on there with the ears. So I'm going to pop the ears in. I'll pop the antlers in a bit, actually. I'll just follow this ear, and again, we can use this quarter quite easily to map the ear out. And again, because obviously you're going to pop yours in nice and lightly, don't worry if you're making any kind of errors or whatever, or you've not quite got it, because more often than not, we get it on the second go, and we can do that because we can bring in the background a little bit over it as well. So again, it's another flexible material for that. So I'm just looking, so I've got the ear there, and I'm bringing out the side. This comes out at the side of the eye, actually, doesn't it, when you look? And we've got the nose, and I'm looking at how far down that nose comes in that half. Oops. Actually, the nose, it's white underneath, so it comes right down to there. So it's over halfway. So it's these little tricks that we can help ourselves with. So it comes down to here. So if we're not sure, we can just go back and have a little look. And it's all pretty much in line, isn't it? Comes in a little bit. So I'm not going to go into huge detail yet with over the nose and things, but I'm going to just pop a general shape in there. They've got beautiful shaped noses. And then we've got this lovely, the mouth underneath as well, the white part of the mouth there. And then, yeah, and then we've got like the side here with the face coming back. Now, if you're not sure about the angle, so we're bringing the head down. We're not sure about the angle. We can just always check back, so that side of the face kind of comes down a little bit like that. And then this bit comes round again a little bit on a steeper angle. So it's really interesting when we do that. So we're just kind of fact checking, really. And as I said, don't worry too much, because even if we put the eyes and everything in, it will totally change the features when we start to shape the fur around the eye. You'll know what I mean once we get going with it. But it'll be the background we pop in anyway. So I'm just going to pop in another ear here. see the ear, it kind of goes behind the antler, doesn't it? But it starts down, comes down here where the top of the, that comes there, but then it's behind this antler at the top. And then again, we can use this part to work out, you know, the fact that the neck has the shape and that it comes out a little bit and then comes back in. So we're still getting a good sense of the animal. I think that might be a leg that's just kind of just there. Well, still getting a sense of the stag without, you know, without just drawing kind of sections of things that don't make sense to us. And again here, and I'm looking, you know, you can use a halfway mark if you've not drawn one on. That's like when the halfway mark is there. So again, you know, I'm looking at kind of whereabouts this stag comes within that section. It goes up in the middle a bit, doesn't it? It comes back down. It's got a lovely curve to the back as well. You pop in there, and we can really go into a bit more depth with that lovely fur as well. It's so beautiful, the colours and everything in there. And really think about the colours we're putting on. So yeah, so we've got a couple of things in place there. We can perhaps pop in, I might just pop in just a little bit of the shape of the patterns of that, and then I'm going to pop the eyes in, just so because we're just doing this bit, it's not going to be, do any harm doing that. So I'm looking at how the eye is coming up, and again, very different to the owl. Like when we were doing the owl, the eyes were very rounded. These are very almost kind of teardrop shapes, aren't they? And sometimes you can't always see all of them either. So as I said, just make a mark and genuinely don't worry about what these particular eyes will look like, because as I said, once we start going in with all the fur and moving it and then the colours, that's what creates the shape of the eye as much as anything. So again, you know, if you wanted to use your thing as a guide, you can then see, you know, am I in the right lines more or less where the eye is going here. There we go. And that's all I'm going to pop in there. So the only other thing really on this particular one is to think about, you know, the antlers. Now you can pop the antlers in if you want, or we did draw them in this morning just so that, you know, sometimes it's nice to get something that feels a bit finished, especially if we've not, you know, done one before. So we'll do them in, but you can always leave those antlers and do the background behind them if you prefer. But if you're only working one or two tones slightly different, then it's fine anyway. Right, so then we've got the antlers coming out. So the antlers can be confusing if we get a bit confused with where everything's going. So I always say, I'm going to pop my line in the middle. If you can work out how far out the widest one comes. So we're looking at, if you looked at this, the grid, you'd have 1, 2, probably in quarters. Maybe it's just a little bit further out than a quarter of the way. So I'm just proportionately working it out. That's half of the page. That's probably about a quarter. So it probably comes just a bit further out to there, like that. Gives us an idea. If we've got the one furthest away, and then we have the one, you know, the other side of that. So I can bring up this antler into this section and draw in that. Then we've got the one furthest away and the one nearest. Now, again, if you want to have a little look at just checking in the angle, that make sure that you're kind of going in the right direction with it, then by all means do that, you know. There we go. And then whilst you're doing that, you can also see how this one curls all the way back in and up. Comes back down again. And then we know that this one, comes around this way. Okay. And then the other one comes behind it. So once you've got two, the furthest and the nearest, everything is so much easier to work out. And then we've got one more going, kind of still coming up the back of there, which is quite handy. And if you've not made that quite wide enough, that's fine. Just make it a bit wider. Not a problem. And then we've got, partly kind of getting these antlers into the right place. They're just magnificent, aren't they? Just absolutely wonderful. You just think how beautiful just some animals are. It's just, it's amazing. How beautiful you are, isn't it? I'm gonna go and sit down with it. She said I'd let you join. So we'll keep popping these in. So again, if you want to pop in the one that's the nearest, and then this other one is going across, isn't it? It's going out this way across the ear. And again, let's look at how far this one comes. It comes much further out into this section, doesn't it? So we're almost 3/4 of the way, not quite, maybe 2/3 of the way of this section here. So comes right out, I'd say almost to here. You put a little mark there. It just gives us because I think things with antlers are so big, we often underestimate the size of them actually. So it's quite good to have a guide. And then again, we can just work out kind of, are we going in the right direction? And then get this widest one up there. And then we've already got that one. This one kind of comes to meet it, doesn't it? And then it twirls around because this one's got a twist in it, this one, like the front one. You can kind of represent that by just showing the twist down there, but we'll work into the detail a little bit more. And then the twist there. There we go. And then there's one more to pop in there. There we go. So what we can do as well is compare. Are we high enough? So I'd say yes, if we line those up. No, maybe not. No, that one goes actually further than I thought it did. I've got the line on my painting, but I'm not sure it is actually. On the picture. Oh no, it is a bit lower, that one, just slightly. But you can always, if if you're not sure, if you think it should go a little bit taller, just make it taller. And then we've got, we've got the bones of a really good start there. So then what we can do is we'll come back to that, and we'll get this background in place. So the reason we fix in the darker colour of the two, so we're looking right back. I'm going to get all of this lovely kind of background in. So whichever one you've chosen, have a little look at the colours. You might have a couple of tones in there. What we tend to do is we put the darker ones in first, and then we tend to build up. So if you've got like some warmer colours in yours, like some oranges and things, then pop those in as well. But we're fixing the darker one into place. So it's fixed in, and we're not going to put that. If we put that over the top of the white, it will kind of really kind of muddy in if we're not careful with the white. Whereas we can fix the dark into place, and it's not going to kind of create a load of chalk dust, which is going to go in over the top of the lighter colour. And then we build up those colours, and then finally finish with the lightest. So I'm just going to just remind myself what colours I've got here. That was quite light, wasn't it? Yeah, I'm going to go in with this one. So all I'm going to do here is I'm just looking at what we got there. So, and again, if it's quite dark and you don't want too much, you don't want it to be too dark. I'm just going to try and follow in this tree line at the back, look. It's very, what's the word? You know, kind of almost fuzzy, isn't it? So, because it's out of focus. So I'm going to fix in what I've got there, but you might actually want to be, you know, if you want to go, if you've got very dark colour and you can't get it light enough, then you can always just not press on too hard and get a lighter colour. We can also, I'm just going to get this in place before I do anything else. So I've got the texture going through on there. If I want to add a bit more, I can. Sometimes we can saturate our paper, but and then what happens then is we can't put any more and it starts to lift off, but you won't know that until you've actually had a go. So again, like I said, it is a real trial and error. And because all of the papers and all of the pastels are so different, there isn't a formula for them. You know, there's nothing that I can say that says like apply this much pressure, apply this many layers, because you just got to have a go with all your paper. Let's see. So I'm just fixing a kind of hazy line. Now, last week, and I remember saying to you, some areas when we're building up the layers start to look quite childlike in how we put them on, and that's absolutely fine. So you'll find the same again here, but it will start to really transform once we kind of start to put the detail on in the deer. So all I was going to say was don't worry about that at all. So I'm using the side of my pastel. So the other thing with pastel is if you want kind of thicker lines, you can use it on its side. You can put it in circular motions like that and rub it in that way. Look, so that gives you a bit more coverage with the circular motions. You can use just the edge if you want it to get a finer line in, just the edge. You know, you can even use kind of the top as well, but I tend not to do that. I tend to use the edge or the side really. And it depends on the size you're working on. So you'll probably see me using my pastel on the end a bit more because I'm working on a very small work. Whereas when I used the A3 this morning, I really used lots on its side and got some nice kind of thick lines. But you can even go that way and just kind of fuzz out the sides as well, you know, and use your finger and kind of blend it like that. You know, when you've got a fine line, it's a bit more complicated. But what you can use are, because lots of people have these handy, are just like a little Q-tip they call, aren't they? But or you know, an earbud or whatever, and you can get those finer lines like that with a bit if you want to pull it down. I'm just kind of you can smudge it out. So that's something you can try if you're wanting to just kind of make it a little bit looser and not quite so dark at the edges. Make sure you blow off some of the chalk as well because it does get quite dusty. Let's see. Now it's quite warm, is this, compared to that? That's much cooler. So I am just going to go over with another colour. So once you've got your darks fixed into place, you can overlay with another colour. What I'm not doing, you notice, I'm just kind of coating. This is a slightly lighter one. Because what we can't do, you can't mix them up on the paper surface. Once they're fixed, they're fixed. But you can put one overlayer, one over the other to get a slightly different feel. We can do that when we get the mist on as well. So if you wanted to make something lighter, you can go over that with a lighter colour. What we're doing though is if we're using something that's of a different colour palette, that's not similar tones, we don't want to muddy that up. So you can apply it with enough pressure so you get a good covering, and then I'm just lightly fixing that into place. And that goes for every layer up. So when we get to those really light ones, we put plenty of pressure on to get the chalk in, and then we're just using minimal pressure. So that prevents us from them getting muddy as well. So I'm just going to carry on, get a few more trees into place, and then I'll stop and see how everyone's getting on. You know, you can make up, like just kind of put some wiggly lines up, almost make up where I'm just really kind of carefully using the edge of my finger to try and get in these spaces. Again, but you can almost kind of make out there's some branches by just, you know, pulling in. This is a paper blender, so we can use those as well. Bring some shapes out and kind of move some twigs and things across when you're working small. When I'm working bigger, I just use the edge of my pastel. And what else have we got? We've got some more other colours here. Trying to get in the shape and I'm kind of trying to make them move a little bit so they're not exactly you know, they're not too straight is what I was going to try and say. I'm just going to go over with this other colour. You could even use like a purple or something. You know, make it a bit of a cooler colour if you wanted to, if you can see that colour in there. There's all sorts of choices. So yeah, I'm going to just kind of soften down the top as well, just kind of bring some of this colour out a little bit. Certainly where I can see, you know, sometimes you get those like little bits of like bushy areas at the bottom, don't you? So I'm just going to pop that out. And again, it's going to look quite patchy at this point because we've not got anything else on our paper. Work out here what's actually tree and not. The tree line kind of coming behind. Kind of bring it behind. We've just been a bit careful on the edge of the face, but it's fine because we can, you know, we've not worked into that yet. Just bringing it in a little bit because we might change the position of the ear or something as well. So there's almost another, I can see something else. I'm not sure what that is. So I'm going to go in with this slightly lighter one in there. It's probably another row of bushes behind, I think is what it probably is. So I'm just going to pop whatever it is I think I can see because we're not always sure, are we? And then there's some more coming down there. Some of them may have just a slightly varying tone. That feels, you see, this one feels a bit darker. This one feels slightly darker as well. I'm going to kind of pop in. This almost goes down the middle, doesn't it, of the deer's head here. So I'm just going to carefully fix that into place. There. Bring some of them out as well because we're almost imitating the kind of branches and things that we think it could be, although it's really unclear because it's so misty and cold, foggy. I'm not altogether sure. Just know it might be part of a tree there. There's something coming up here which looks like it's foliage again off the tree. So I'm just going to pop that in just very lightly, smudge that in. And then we've got some behind as well. Another tree. So again, I'm just kind of pushing little bits out the side, bits of foliage, fixing it into place. And then in the area out here, it's coming in, it's got some bottom of the foliage again there. What's going on in the background here, isn't it, at the bottom? Looks like it's something coming around some trees or plenty going on here. If it looks quite abstract at the moment, that's exactly where you should be, so don't worry. It doesn't start to take shape until we start to pop a little bit more of what's going on in there. So I'm just kind of moving this around a little bit. I'm going to go over with this other lighter one as well, where I feel it's a bit lighter in places. Okay, so I'm just blowing this off a little bit there. I'm just going to go through and just see if I've got a slightly, but ever so slightly darker version. There we go. And I just want to work that through a little bit on the areas that look just that bit darker, just so it kind of creates a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of contrast. Not too much because I don't want to make it really stand out because it is going into the background. I just want to kind of, sometimes what we end up doing is losing a bit of the shape. I'm just going to pop some back in a little bit, fix it in, just being a bit light with my finger there, but we're still fixing it in nonetheless. Okay, right, it's definitely time for to wipe fingers. I'm just going to dry my fingers off actually on the apron so that they're not, because what we'll do sometimes if you put wet fingers back down, it scrubs a little bit up a little bit and dampens your pastel, so that's not great. So you keep that clean. So you can blow the pastel off or tap it, whichever's best for you. And then what we're going to do now is go over the top with a lighter one. So I'm going to take it's not pure white yet, this one, it's slightly different colour. So this is where, because we're going over a lighter one, we're not going to want to kind of, what we don't want to do when we get it on there is to really scrub, really put pressure on, because that will start to disturb the layer underneath. So what we're doing is putting enough pastel on, nice and, thickly, and then we can just brush it over the bits that are darker. And it makes it really kind of get that quite lovely misty feel. So I'm kind of going in, I'm going on a bit on the side there. I'm just going to put plenty on, putting enough pressure on so it gives a good coverage, and then lightly with my fingertip, just bringing that, and I'm bringing it a little bit over the top. So fix it in place, bring it over the top of it. So it gives us that really nice kind of misty feel there. So I'm going to go in again. Sometimes you'll see as well where you get like brighter bits where it's coming through the trees or whatever. Like that. So fix it. And sometimes you don't actually want to bring it over anywhere. You just want to kind of leave it nice and brighter where it is, and that's fine as well. I've left that a little bit brighter coming through there. It's a bit more misty at this side because it feels a bit more misty at this side. So yeah, I'm putting plenty on. So this is covering the much more than the darker one because I'm popping it on a little bit more thickly. So again here. There we go. And then, you know, around the, in between as well, where the lighter bits are between the, I just have a little bit coming through the, in here as well. So we're just kind of doing that. And again, you can always use, if it's really delicate, you can always use just a little, you know, one of these little buds or a paper blender if you've got one. Again, I'm just coming in between, making sure it's quite light, isn't it, all around this area. So I'm just popping on the side, nice big pressure on there. Just tap that in. Careful around the darker areas. Just tap this in, bringing it a bit over the top there because it is a bit mistier over here. And then the same in here, so I've got this bit between. You can also use a pastel pencil if you've got pastel pencils to do that. That can get into the, you know, the nooks and crannies, or just using the edge of the pastel. But it's lovely to be able to kind of move that pastel around. There's nothing like it actually. It's quite light in the middle here. So like that. A little bit more in here, in between, because there's like little bits coming through, isn't there? So I'm moving the picture there. So little areas just kind of popping through that are just that bit lighter between. So pop that in. And we're just working our way around like that. So this background is changing a little bit. You know, just keep looking. What can you see? Just adding in a little bit more. And it's just getting to grips with how it feels. And as I said, you know, the background still will feel a little bit different, but we will be keep adding, and it'll change again once we start to get the deer in place. So I'm just making that edge a little bit blended slightly, just gently bringing it to the edge because I don't want a really crisp hard line there because it's under the mist. I want it to be fairly loose. So I'm just going to pop this in. So this edge is not too hard. Now, just softening the edge a little bit without kind of scrubbing it all up. There we go. So keep working in wherever you can see. Where you think, oh yeah, I'd like to kind of bring a little bit of that nice softness through there. And it may be even over some of the browns that you've done that you think, oh, that was a bit, need it toned down slightly. Again, just pop a little bit like over, just very gently bring it over. Just make sure your fingers are clean in between. That's not that you haven't had any kind of darks transfer on it there. And then it just softens down any edges if you're not happy with those as well. And we just keep going like that all the way across. And you can even bring it down so you can start to look like create the shape of the head as well. If you think, oh, it's a bit round or whatever, and I want to just flatten it off the top, you know, that's how we can use the background to do that as well. The same when we're going around the antlers and things like that, we can just go, oh, okay, let's just pop a little bit of, there we go. Just working our way along. Getting some of these lights in here. So yeah, we can just kind of go, right, what shape do I want this antler to be? Let's just, and vice versa, if we go over with some light colour and we think, oh, I'm not sure about that. I think I've, made the shape not how I want it. Well, again, we can put it back in afterwards with some of the other colours. Can move the line again. Okay, so there we go. So I've gone in with a very much a creamy colour here, but you can use white or anything. Really, I've got used cream because it'd be very difficult, a bit more difficult to see it with the camera on. Just get some of these in again. We're just kind of applying the pressure, and I will make a pause in a moment when we get to the next part of this. It does start to feel a bit more like we've got kind of a misty background or in place as we go. It starts to become a little less childlike as we go, but again, that will also make a difference once we get the start to get the deer and make that a sharper, slightly sharper outline. I'm just going to go in there with some brights again. Nice light touch. Right through here. Right, there we go. So we're getting there. I'm just going to blow off a lot of that chalk. Make sure. Now, again, if there were any kind of bright, so what we've got on here when we start to look is that we can see that this is really bright white here, isn't it? Much brighter around here, and maybe just there might be a little area there. So that's when I possibly, I'm just going to check my fingers are clean enough. Just finish off by going in with my brightest colour of all. So I'm going to go in. This is similar to what we were doing when we were looking at the wintry acrylics, where once you put on the very brightest, it really did pop. So what I'm doing over here, again, pressing it on just gently, especially if we've got like some darker underlays, want to be a bit careful there. And then I'm just going to run this really bright one through, coming through the trees there. It's interesting then, isn't it? Like how we can, and again, I'm really light now because we're loading these up, these layers. So we're just kind of a nice light touch there to get that one on. And then any other little bits that feel a bit lighter again, I'm going to just marginally go over just a bit. Just kind of building those little areas up, just a few little light spots. Down here. Okay. And then once you're not, if you get to a point where you think I'm not sure what I need to pop, just stop there. Really is what I was saying. So pop a bit in here, because you can end up kind of so much to look at. You think, oh, I'll do this and I'll do that, but actually, you just, we can come back to it once we've got the stuff on. So I'm just going to wipe my fingers. So it is starting to change, but again, not just yet. So we've still got to have a bit of a amount of faith, and it will all be fine while we're building up these layers and then the effect. So I'm going to take a pause there, see how you're all getting on with that. Brightening up my there we go. Okay, so we're kind of working into our background a little bit and getting some of that into place, which has been really, really enjoyable. So I'm just seeing it, just softening this edge here. It's got a bit harsh because I've got a very light one in there. So what we're thinking about now really is, how we're going to go in and start to work with the deer and the antlers and everything. And it's exactly the same thing. So, you can get the head in first, or you can get the antlers in and then work on the head, or you can work on the body. It doesn't really matter, to be fair, whichever you choose to do. So I started with the head this morning just because I'm always saying to everybody, get the eyes in first. But I'm actually going to put the antlers in so we've got something, because sometimes what happens is we you can end up with a head. It feels a little doesn't it feels a little bit kind of disjointed. So today I'll go in with the antlers. So again, I'm just testing the different colours. So I am really, really in quite small today with my very tiny bit of paper. So I may go to my pencils a little bit more just so I can get something in. So I'm just testing some of those colours that we've got there. And I'll be looking at the darkest colours. So we'll need some that are much dark, a darker tone, and then some lighter tones, and then all the different kind of, it's whether you think it's a sandy colour or I'm going with that one, which is slightly different to the one that I've used in the background. It's a bit warmer. So we've got that as well. I'm just kind of lining up a few different tones here, ready to use. And then there's a couple of lighter ones, but some, like, it depends on which one you're looking at, because some of them are quite blue tones, and some you'll see all sorts of colours in there. It's almost I can see a tiny bit of a pinky there. So I've got this pastel here, which is a bit kind of lilac-y. In fact, you can't see that very well on there. I might have to go in with a brighter one just so you can see it. Going in with a bit of this pink as well. So I'm just going to kind of start to pop in the darker areas on the antlers. And again, you can be using the end of your you can use the end of your pastel on its edge quite well, quite happily. So I think I remember this last time. I don't have a really dark, really dark brown in my kit actually. So I'm just going to go in with the nearest fit here. Get that set into place. And we're just kind of looking at just all of the different patterns and things that we get in. It's really lovely. I'm setting those in. And you can use dots and things. You can use it if you're doing that same with the end of your pastel. If you're working slightly bigger than me, you can use the end of your pastel to make those kinds of shapes as well. And we can still just fix those in a little bit into place. That is a really tiny area. The other thing you can try, as well as your paper blender, is like a rubber blender like this. It's basically like a paintbrush with a little tip on. This particularly might be really handy for next week, something like this, or definitely a nearbud if not. Just because you can get into all the edges with it. and just it kind of spreads things around, but gets into the small places that are a bit difficult for a finger or a hand. There we go. I'm going to go in some even darker colour here. I'm just going to bring a little bit of this black into there because it's much darker than I have. And again, we're looking at underneath here, how we get this lovely, really dark shadow, don't we, underneath this side of the antlers. We're observing all of those little changes as well. Okay, and again, just fixing that into place. Blow off any pastel as well that you've got. And obviously, as we go up, it's so much lighter up here, isn't it? So much lighter. Excuse me. Excuse me. So just getting those in. So what I'm doing here, I'm just seeing if I can see kind of a little bit of shadow where I can here, just a little bit up this back. Not all, sometimes you don't get it all the way, but where I can see it, I'm popping it in. The little shadow on here as well. Comes down here. And in this little dent there, where this turns. So I'll pop that in. There's a little bit of a shadow at the top. Some of it's quite light, so I'm making this much lighter here. I can still see a bit of a... There we go. Around the same on the other side as well. So I'm just kind of mimicking what I can see there with these darks. And we'll start to see where the light's catching it and everything. But again, it's like trying to get how it's mottled. As I said, you can, if you're working A4, it'd be fine to just use the end of your pastel and then just kind of either dot it in a little bit with your finger or a little board or something. I'm using my blending tips. I'm so small at the moment. And again, we're just kind of getting the darker areas set in. Yeah, fix them in one way. And then, if you need to go in a little bit, any of the patterning or anything that's in there that should be a bit darker, getting that set in before I go in with any lighter colours really on here. Beautiful mottling of the antlers. It's just lovely, isn't it? Get quite, really quite into that. Yeah. And then we can start to have a think. Actually, there's a little bit more down the bottom here. It's very dark. And then I'm just going to start to go in with some of these warmer colours. Now, again, it's deciding how warm the colours are or how light or bright. So we just need to test whatever you've got really. You can go with a warm kind of an orangey colour as well, because that's quite a nice contrast. You've got, if you've got mainly brights in your set, have an experiment with something like orange. Just kind of model it in. So I'm just back to using a normal pastel now, because I can kind of get the edge in here. Just kind of popping in some of that mottling on some of this, because it does feel a bit warmer with that. But then as I go up there, it's looking up to me a little bit less warm and a bit more pastel peachy. So I'm going to try and replicate that. So there's a lot in these lovely antlers, isn't there? So let's have a look. The ones at the top. Just going to get that peachiness in there. Whatever colour you decide to go for. Just good to make a start. And like I was saying, sometimes if the mottling comes over the top, the pattern comes over the top, and you can't avoid it being the dark, then just flip that round. That's okay. I can't always put the darker one on first, especially if we've got like the patterning comes over in a darker colour. So when we're putting things on, just using the back of this dark colour that I did earlier, just to bring a little bit of a shadow under there. Underneath, which is often where we get them, some you tend to be underneath. And then this one comes all the way around. We're just working out what colours we're going to put in there. So try this one that's a bit more sandy in here. So this is quite, we've got a bit more of detail going on here. But you can, you can actually make, if you fancy that not being so detailed, you can actually just brush off and let that kind of like just, like almost a kind of a magical feel where you just have colours kind of spreading out from it and make it very loose indeed. You don't have to stick with it being so detailed. If you've fancy being a bit wild and going, oh, I'd like some, to spread a bit of colour over, then you're more than welcome to do that. And then I would just kind of get in there now and say, where is it a bit lighter or grey or blue or whatever colour it is? I'm going to pop a bit of, I think I got a pink one out earlier, but I'm going to try a bit of blue almost in here as well, because it feels like there's a bit of a blue tone. But again, we all saw different colours in it this morning, so whatever you see, you pop in. And then I was a bit of pink. I'm going to pop a bit of pink, and this is where, when we start to add some colours, we can get an unexpected nice little effect actually with some lovely colour. So don't be frightened of using those brighter ones. See what happens when you do. Okay, so you might want to you might have like see where there might be like a little, like here, there's a bit of a shadow underneath. So I'm going to capture the shadow underneath. And then you can do the same if there's anything catching the light as well. And then if there's any other little bits you want to pop in, any little details anywhere, any mottling or anything, just go, this is where your little hand comes in, with our own little kind of style of things, of artwork. So I'm going to leave that now for the moment. I'll come back to it a bit later on and start to really think about the face and the body. And so what we're doing here is just having a little think about, I'm going to just get my eyes in place as before, and then start to, move around, get this colour moved around. So I'm going to go in all black to start with here. Little eye comes down. And again, we can change the shape of the eye really easily as we go, just by adding the other bits that we can see around the stag. I'm just bringing this little eye to the out so you can see the outside edge of the eye there. And again, just fixing that really dark colour in because we do get black for the eyes. But then there's a tiny little mark in the eye where I just get a little reflection there. So I'm going to try and pop that on. So it's going over black. So I'm just getting a quite a bit of pressure in there is what I should have said. And there's a little bit of a twinkle on this edge, but it's not quite bright white. So I'm just going to go in with like a slightly other colour just so we can see it. I'm just going to put the edge back on there. Okay. I'll move that down a bit actually. It's a bit high up, that one. Right, so again, now we start to think about what's going on here. What's going on around the deer as well. I'm going to put that one off, but I've got the dark ones in. So again, just find your dark colour that you're using. And we're looking, aren't we, at the shape between the antlers here. Quite flat, isn't it? And then all around the antlers and how that shape, how that fur is shaped and the kind of markings we've got, and then how it comes out around the other side of the antler, because again, that creates the side of the shape of the face that we might not have put in to start with, but we would notice more now we're actually, now we're zoned in really on the shape of the face. So I've got these lovely dark markings, aren't they? Really nice there. So we can start to pop those in, just make them kind of feel a bit more fur-like. We'll see if I'm going with a let's see what I've got. Going with it's quite warm though, that's the only thing. But again, we're just going with the best fit that we've got. So again, it'll look strange when we've got these little areas on their own, but once we start to build up around those as well, it all just fits into place. It's lovely. Again, you need to fix those in place, whether it's just kind of a tap of your finger or a bud or something like that. I'm just going to kind of get the shape around the head here. This is coming through. That's almost going onto the top of the ear there as well, actually. It comes on the markings, doesn't it? Behind there. I'm going over with a slightly darker one because I've just to kind of layer up a bit. Put that in, make sure it's in. Okay, and then, we can pick up on these little light bits as well. So where we get around the, just nice and just put plenty of pressure on, where we get around the base of the antler where it picks up the light there. Nice, and just pop the pressure on it. And you don't necessarily, if you've got enough pressure on, you don't necessarily need to fix it. You can put very tiny little bit of pressure on with your hand or whatever. And then we can start to look at the other tones in here. And work, start to work our way down and around. So I'm going to start with, go back to the eyes now, and also this middle section here. And look at these lovely tones that we've got in there, which are actually quite a bit darker, aren't they? Those. They're almost a bit grey-like, so I'm not quite sure which colour to go in with. I don't think I've got a suitable grey. So I think what I might do is use a combination. I'll get the darker one set in place. So I'm looking at it, it kind of comes it's quite mottled, that's the thing. So you can either go in with one surface if you want and like kind of set it in, or you can just do a couple and get the texture and mottle it. It doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of looking at this middle section that's a bit darker down here. Just to get something into place there. So it makes a bit more sense. Fix that in place. And I'm going to go in with a grey as well. Just because that's the colour that I'm seeing. There we go. And I'm looking at the direction that it seems to be going. It seems to be kind of coming down. I'm not going in with a hard block of either colour. Just building it up there. And then I'm going to make sure now I've got the areas around the eyes that I want in place as well. So to make sure at this point that the ones are well washed. This can be the sticking point sometimes. Right, so I'm looking around the eyes. I want to get those darker ones set into place. I might have a grey pencil there. You get these around the eyes that are coming down here. Just kind of above the eyelid there. Just coming down a little bit, kind of comes where the corner of the eye is. It kind of comes round here. And then it seems to be going over the nose like that. There's almost a kind of an invisible line here, isn't there, down the middle, which it does almost look a bit linear towards the nose. So I'll pop that in. Just get a bit in place. You can smudge it in, or you can do all of it grey. I'm just using the blue, my bluey grey paper to enhance what's already going on there. But if you've got white and you want a bit more coverage, then go over with all grey first if you want to, and then build up a bit of the white on top. Either way, it's fine. And then we're going that way as well. And then around the eye, we're looking at some of these there's a few little warmer ones in it, isn't there? So, I don't know what colour you want to do, but like you could try an orangey or an ochre colour. Let's test that. Test that there. Okay. Or it might even be even lighter than that, I'm not sure, but I'll pop a little bit. Just a bit of warmth in here. It's a bit warm, and above this eye as well, where the edge of this this flare is up here, it's a bit warmer. Really where the edge of the ear is coming down. So let's do that, pop that into place. Then look at this eye over here. Just bringing this eye, the patchiness of it up here. And then pop in a little bit of a lighter colour. So I'm going to go in with a creamy colour just here. Just kind of picks up the top of the eyelid. Like that. And then we've also got, it kind of comes down past the corner here. There's like a little bit of a line there. I'll just move that back so you can see. There's a couple of little lines there, look. that kind of create the shape around the eye. And I've popped that on quite hard. There's another one there, another patch here. So again, we can go over with this lighter one. And then a bit on this side as well. So I'm going on quite hard with that, and just a very brief little tap to kind of fix it in. Then it starts to, we should start to be able to see a little bit more of the shape in there. So just looking at all the different kind of little mottled colours and stuff we've got across the face. So it's still, we're still filling in the details. We're not quite there. We've got the edge of the face coming down here. I'm going to go in with this grey taupey one where just underneath where the eye is there. And make sure we've got the edge of the eyebrow here as well, because that will help and create a bit of definition there. And then we've got this coming down. In here, just a nice soft colour there. You can just smudge the inside of that as well. And then we're still working around, you know, just have a look around at that eye. Just going to pop in, because we've got the darks in, just a few of these warmer colours, look, so I can see them now a bit more clearly on here. And then there's some on the side of the face here as well. These warm bits help create the shape of the face as well to make it a bit more 3D actually. Yeah. And then the bits around as well, the ear. The ear is quite warm again, and that comes around the edge of the face a tidgy bit, doesn't it? I'm just popping those in. So all of these shapes around the face and in the face create the shape of the face as well. Once we start popping the underneath part as well, that will start to create it. So it doesn't just jump out as being that's the face at all. It's how we build up the layers. Give them a few kind of warmer bits in here. We'll also need to get these lighter ones in again. So we've got lovely eyebrows. Catching the light, isn't it? And then underneath the eye as well, we've got them coming out here. There we go. And then as we come down, we've got a few lighter patches in there. And a few more grey patches as well in there. And then we're just building it up, look. Just each little bit, building up, building up. Might be quite soft as well. There isn't really a harsh transition, is there, to the where the body is and the face, because it's similar tones of fur. And then when we are moving down, we can then get this very, very light area around the nose. So if you want to actually just kind of pop in a shape around where the nose goes with your pastel, the edge of your pastel. Let's just move this one down. Yeah, I'm just going to make sure I pop my nose back in there first, so I can see where the lightest colour is going to go as well. And I might actually fix this nose in place first. I've got the edge of the nose. They've got lovely shaped noses there. It comes around, doesn't it? And we even get like where the light's hitting the nose as well, so we can kind of get the colour in to be quite dark to start with, and then just get those that's what I'm going to do. I'm using the giving pastel actually if it's a bigger shape. And then get most of this bit in, and then we'll have a little pause just to check, see how everything's getting on again. Right, so I'm going to use my blender a little bit, my blending tip, because I'm struggling to get my any finger in that. That's such a small space. So we're just kind of trying to look at the shape that we can see of this nose as well. And then once we've got the other elements in around it, it will start to make a bit more sense. So again, what we can do is just get a little bit of some of these lighter little marks that you get on the nose where it's catching the light's just catching the top because it's wet, isn't it? You know, there we go. We get a sense that this is the nose just from seeing these little shines and things on there. I'm going to take a little bit of that. There we go, so it's not too bright. And then start to pop in, because what we've got is quite a lot of white fur underneath when we look really closely on this particular one anyway, and then quite a bit of white fur over the top as well. So I'm just going to pop that in myself, and I'm actually popping that in individually rather than a block, just so it feels a bit more like the fur, a direction really. Just creating a bit of directional movement with the pastel, the edge of the pastel there. Lovely, starting to get this lovely shape now. It's really feeling kind of curved as well around the side, so it curls over, and then again underneath. But you won't be able to see that as much until we put on the next bit of fur. So it's starting, it starts to really take shape, doesn't it? All of a sudden we're like, oh yeah, I can see that it's starting. So we've got the ears, we've got a little bit of the lovely different tones in the fur. So this is where you can really experiment with colour. So we've got the lighter tones. They're all quite warm though, although there's a few cooler brown ones in there. There's also some kind of quite reddy colours. You can go in with, some like sienna-y colours or some orange. You haven't got if you've mainly bright, go and try an orange or something, and then you can even pop a yellow one over the top as well. So just have a little go with that. So we've got obviously the ears to do, so we can just look in the same way we've done on this. The ears, I'm just going to pop in a few of these bits, just get those done. So we see where we're going. That helps actually with the shape of the ear as well. A bit of shadow in there. But again, you can even pop a bit of a reddy one in there if you wanted, just to kind of get that colour up a bit. A bit on the edge of the ear. Yeah, we're just looking at the shape and soften it down by just kind of giving it a bit of a smudge with the edge of your pencil or your pastel. And then, we're looking at those tones in the middle. There's some that might be a bit grey. We just got to go in with what we think we can see. Not worry too much about it. I'm going to go with a bit of blue in there. Right, and then, once we've got those in, we can just start to kind of look at the different colours and things that are coming around there. So I'm going to go in with, I think, this colour, which is a bit sandy. So I'm not actually here going in with a dark. And again, this is where we have to think about how rules work for us, because actually you can see some of those darker ones come over the top. So I'm going quite bright underneath. You could even go like a bit yellowy underneath, even if you wanted to. I'm going in with a sandy one. And this is where I can actually rub in a little bit more and kind of add more kind of more texture in there. This is the other thing as well, if we're working in all of the same tones, these are all kind of orangey colours, apart from maybe the brown, then it does make it easier to for sure to kind of layer over some of these colours. So we've got a bit of grey coming under here, haven't we? Maybe like under the chin bit there. And then another bright here over the top of that. And I suppose there's a few little, and I think that might be a bit of a, that's a bit too greeny. Actually, I'll just go with this pencil a bit lighter. Yeah, so I'm just going to go in here, just get a few of those little bits where we're getting kind of the furs kind of moving, isn't it? We're getting that little movement of patterns. And as long as we don't really kind of rub it in, that it'll be fine. So like the edge is catching here again. We've kind of got this movement of the fur going in here, and I'm just wiggling it about. So you can do that the same with the end of the pastel as well, is to wiggle it and just create that kind of loose shape really. Now there's almost a bit of a yellow underneath here, so I'm going to go in a bit more with that. It's almost how it transitions into the next part of the deer there. And then we've got another little bit, but I'm going to make that slightly warmer up this side. It feels a bit warmer on the top there. Got slightly brighter colour there. And again, I'm just fixing it in just carefully over the top of the background there. I'm going to go over again with a bit more light because I'm not quite as, that a little bit slightly darker. There we go. So we're kind of all the way down really to, we've all got the body to think about, and then there's lots of different patches that we can pop in as we go around here. But I'll take a pause at that point, see how everyone's getting on, because I know there's a lot to think about, but it's starting to transform now, isn't it? So that's good, a good point to stop, and you could have a little step back from your work as well. Okay, so we're just on kind of putting some of the getting some of these bits in with the beautiful fur. So I am going to come in with a dark, slightly more reddy tone actually. That one's quite dark. Let's see what this one is. So I just keep testing these colours that we've got all the time, and I'm going to try and get some of these tufts, though, do come in after, don't they? But I want to quite try and get like a reddy brown. And it's quite dark in places, so I'm going to start coming in, just getting some of these dark ones into place, just almost like in patches coming down. I want to get a bit darker in there. I mean, you can do this with a pencil as well if you want to. So I am just bringing that over a little bit because I'm going to darken anyway this around this area. So I actually flipped this over because it is quite dark around here and it gets a bit lighter up here. So I'm just going to pop some of this in. Quite thin underneath. I haven't really layered up massively on this bit. I'm going to build up some of these nice sandy tones on top. There's a little bit coming up here, which I'm using just a slightly different colour to do here. Just building these up. I'm bringing this kind of like down as well. So I'm following the pattern of the fur. But I'm not really scrubbing it round. I'm just kind of bringing this in a bit. And then I'm going to overlay with these kind of much warmer tones here. It's almost a bit orangey there. Slightly darker, so I'm just going to try that one. I think this one is a really good colour for over the back here. And some of these colours that I can see in there, but you can go, you know, there's all sorts of ones. I'm not worried about these two combining either. Because they're a similar tone, so they're not going to get muddy. If it was yellow, that's a different story, but it's not. So I'm kind of building up this, it's a bit, you know, a rich colour of the colours that we've got in there. Bring in this one, which is a bit more reddy colour. Where I can see it's a bit lighter up here. It's just kind of just wiggling my, just wiggling this around a bit. And we're just building this up as we go. Bringing some of this lovely colour through. Just building up those layers. Again, I'm just being careful there at the moment that I don't have all this really, you know, really muddy colours all over. And then I am just going in again, so it's quite soft, because the fur is quite downy, isn't it? Just going in now with a sandier colour, like the one I've got kind of around here. It's a bit ochre-y, like a bit yellow ochre colour, really. I'm just adding in some of the highlights here. And then we're putting, you know, a good amount of pressure on there as well to make sure it kind of sticks. And I'm just now kind of again wiggling my pastels to get in a little bit of nice texture. And we're starting to get kind of these lovely patterns and things coming around of the deer. So I've kept that quite light really, and a little bit of kind of grey weave through here. So I might pop a little bit of that back in there. Give it a little bit of continuity. Um, I'll go in with another bright here through there, and then if you want to pop any kind of little marks back in, I'm just adding it with a bit of pencil here, but you don't need to. You can use your pastel if you're working on A4 or bigger. There's a bit of room to use the edge of it, and then again you can kind of go in with where is there anywhere else you want to kind of put a few little anywhere that stands out that you want to pop a little bit of texture. Then you can go in, pop a little bit more, and you can soften it down very, very lightly, or you can just leave it in there. I'm just trying to find really where get some kind of lively areas that stand out. Any areas that are a bit deeper that you've got, where you've got the shadow, that's good to get those in. Yeah, just realised I'm not joined this edge up together like this. There we go. And then again, a bit more darker over here in this corner, where it just creates the shape really of the animal as well, and the flat side of it, which is great. And then I am just going to neaten up slightly so that I get a bit of a contrast between the back of the snow, so we know that that's because it's so textured, it's not getting. You could use the ready colour, you don't have to use it like a dark colour, but just make sure it's a little bit more linear so that I've got this lovely contrast of the background. But yeah, so just build up and building it up like that really. What's down this side? So obviously we've got a little bit of it's like the edge of a wall or something, it could be. This, I'm gonna layer these two. I'm really careful at the side of the deer that I don't put this very dark colour on. There we go. There's a bit coming in down here as well, where it's like the edge of the rock or something. Right. I'm just clearing my hands up before I do any light on there, because otherwise it'd be really really very dark. So I'm just going to take this up behind. Yeah, but it's and then try and get some of the softness of that snow over the top, which has got a kind of a warm tone in places. So I'm going to go in, I'll go in with this one to start with, where it's a bit warmer here. And then in with this nice bright snow at the top here. And again, I'm just kind of getting a feel for it. It doesn't need to be perfect. And then we're just kind of getting that, getting those colours in there. And I'm just going to go in without smudging it, just kind of push it really. There we are. I'm going to leave that one there. And I hope you really, really enjoyed doing the pastels and just getting a feel for the movement of them and the different kinds of effects and things that you like. And like, as I was saying, if there's anything you want to go back on, if you wanted to make anything a bit darker, if you wanted to make anything, lighter, for example, you might want to pop a bit more like over the top. That's absolutely fine. So I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much.